Right, you've successfully logged in, and depending on the status afforded to you on the system, you will see all or some of the icons that appear in the drop-down menu on the left-hand side of the screen. Remember, the drop-down menu appears when you click on the white eas-e logo on the top left-hand side against the blue background. The main tab you will need to capture new clients would be the Services tab, the one that is highlighted on your screen. You enter the client's identity number, or if it is a company or other juristic entity, its registration number exactly as it appears on the registration document in the space in the middle of the page. From here, one of two things will happen. If the client is already a client of your company and you have already previously captured the client on the system, then the system will indicate that to you. If not, then what you see on the screen now will appear. It will say client is not found, and it will then ask you to perform customer due diligence either on a natural person or on a juristic entity. You click on either of those icons and carry on with the work on the next page. For the purposes of this tutorial, we're going to use a client's details that had already been captured. It will facilitate the flow of things, and it will save you the embarrassment of watching me type. When a client has been loaded previously, you will see the warning, which will tell you that you're about to make changes to an existing entity or a person. And typically, why you would see this is because an existing client may have taken out a new product or availed herself of a new service. So when you click on proceed, then a screen will appear that does not contain any information. And in the example, of course, it does now. And all you have to do is go through the steps and complete every aspect of that screen. You simply click on the downward arrow to open up the drop-down screen in every little section and select the most appropriate answer to the information that you have on hand. Under person of interest, please bear in mind that if your client is not a person listed there, the very last item in that list is an ordinary citizen. Please then select that. Moreover, on your screen, you'll see a reference to an identity document, and there is a status that says the identity document is already uploaded. Unfortunately, based on the recording facility that I'm using, I can't show you what it looks like, but you are able to upload an identity document directly from your computer. Here, please note the different file types that are supported. Once you are done with the page, scroll to the bottom of that page and click on the next button so that the next page would appear. Please make sure that you complete all the sections marked with an asterisk, as those sections are compulsory and the system will not allow you to move to the next page unless you have put some information in there. When you get to the address details of the client, you will note that proof of residence is not compulsory. This is so because we interrogate the National Credit Database to establish the client's electronic footprint, but it must be borne in mind that obtaining hard copy proof of residence in all instances is far more preferable than relying on a client's electronic footprint. Therefore, we would encourage you to try and get proof of a client's residence, such as may be permitted by the risk management and compliance program of your employer. Please note, when you get to the product and services section, all the products and services listed by your employer will appear on a drop-down screen. You can select as many of these as are appropriate in the circumstances. The same principle applies on the page that deals with the business questions. Multiple drop-down screens with multiple potential answers to each question. Please note that you will not be allowed to proceed to the finalization page without answering each of these questions. And that's it. You have done your work with regards to that client in probably a third or a quarter of the time that it has taken me to explain to you how to do it. This page will tell you that you have successfully completed the prescribed process, but it does not automatically mean that the client has been approved. In the case on your screen now, you will see a red circle with a red cross in. This means that although you've done everything, there are certain aspects regarding the risk profile of the client which warrant further remedial action and attention. And what happens automatically from here on is that the system will identify which risk area requires that attention, and it will automatically send an email to the person who had been nominated by your employer to attend to that risk issue. When that red circle turns green and there is a green right tick inside, it means that not only have you completed your part of the job, but that there are no risks attaching to the client that require remedial activity, and therefore you may proceed with the opening of the account or the issuing of the insurance policy or whatever the nature of the business your company has with the client. If you are a remedial action user, then you will be notified via email that somewhere a risk threshold had been exceeded, which requires your attention. The correct procedure to follow is to log into the system and then go to the remedial action section in the drop-down menu, click on that, and then make the selection of the clients requiring remedial action that will appear. It happens from time to time that the data capturer is also the remedial action user, and then the temptation is there to quickly go to the remedial action section to try and fix the problem immediately because you are already logged into the system. The trouble with this is that there is a time delay between the completion of the customer due diligence process and when the email gets generated. The email only gets generated once the data has moved roughly halfway around the world and back in various stages of encryption and decryption, so that it happens that when you go into the remedial action section, that particular client's details will not already appear there. We therefore highly recommend that you wait until you receive the remedial action mail to avoid the impression that the system does not do what it is supposed to do. When you double click on the selected client's name in the remedial action section, it will open the risk report with regards to that client. And there are a few things worth noting here. In the top right-hand corner, you will see the status of the client says that it's pending, therefore not approved, but not rejected either. And when you cast your eyes a little bit further down under the section that deals with personal details, you will see certain of the information highlighted in a reddish color. This indicates that the client is a person of interest because you had selected the client to be a premier of a province. And at the bottom of that section, it says the following issues have been flagged. Person of interest is a concern. Now, we know from the risk management and compliance program that the remedial action user for this particular task should be a senior manager in the organization, because you are not allowed to do business with a person like this unless the client has been approved by a senior manager together with certain additional due diligence measures that must be implemented. The risk report of a client comprises 2 pages. The first page shows the allocation of risk and where high risk areas have been, or thresholds rather, have been exceeded. And the second page deals with the compliance actions. And this is on this page where the remedial actions take place. Approximately halfway down the page is a section that is entitled Remedial Action, and it is to this section that the remedial action user should go. First item in the remedial action menu is the remedial action item. You will note that there is a drop-down facility, and the item that you are required to be working on will appear there. You click on that item, which will then take you to the next section, the compliance action, where you will have the choice of approving the client or further pending this client awaiting additional information or declining the client. In typical circumstances, you would approve the client, which then takes you to the next screen where you have to provide a reason for this action. Now, it is important, if you are a remedial action user, that the reason you provide for your action is consistent with the content of your risk management and compliance program. As you can see from the data that appears on your screen, in this particular case, the remedial action item that was selected is the person of interest is a concern. The compliance action states approved, and under the reason for the action, it states conduct monthly transaction monitoring on bank account. Once you have done this, the next step would be to click on the update button at the bottom of the page. Before we leave the page though, if you scroll down just a little bit further, you will come to the last section on the compliance page, which allows you to delegate a remedial action. So if for some reason there is urgency and you are unable to attend to the matter immediately, or you wish to send an instruction to someone to obtain more information, you write the delegation function or action in the space provided, and you may then select from any of the authorized users in your employer organization to whom to delegate this function. And then lastly, on this second page, at the top, you will see a record of every single action undertaken on the system in respect of this client, as well as the person who undertook that remedial action user. This is designed to foster individual accountability and responsibility. After you've clicked the update button, you go back to the remedial action section to make sure that there are no outstanding items left. If there are none, you can scroll back up to the top of the page, and you will now see in the top right-hand corner that the client had been approved. You can access this risk report at any stage via the system. If your employer requires, you can also download the report as a PDF document in order to store a hard copy on the client file, if that is your procedure. Okay, the procedure to capture a juristic entity, such as a trust or a company, is substantially the same as that for a natural person. There are a few tweaks here and there which we will get to. I'm simply saying this now because I'm not going to show you every screen where the screens are exactly the same as for a natural person. We've already covered that. And as for a natural person, you start the search function and you first capture, without spacing, the registration number of the entity exactly as it appears on the registration document. As before, the system will ask you to tell it whether you want to capture a natural person or a juristic entity, and in this case, you would select the juristic entity in order to proceed with the capture process. You will see that the registration number that you have put in on the first page now pulls through to the second page as with a natural person, and from here the questionnaire is substantially similar, obviously only adapted for the juristic environment. You still put in on a drop down the type of entity that you wish to capture. You still complete the name, and in the upload section for documentation, you upload the company's registration documents, or in the case of a trust, the trust's letters of authority. We have provided space for the upload of additional documentation, which you can use at your discretion. What we find many of our clients do, especially when they capture trusts, is you must remember that there is a requirement that you must also perform customer due diligence on all named beneficiaries of the trust. And People therefore capture the entire trust document in this section to be able to demonstrate that they have captured and done CDD on all the named beneficiaries as well. The next page contains address details, and it is useful here to just understand what the fixed requirements are with regards to trust addresses. It is not the address of the founder or the trustees, but it is the address of the Master of the High Court where the trust had been registered that must be included here, and that address you find on the letter of authority that you have already uploaded on the first page. And in order to demonstrate that you have that address, you simply re-upload that letter of authority here. In the case of companies, the FIC does not have a requirement except that you must capture the company's registered address. And here it's useful to know what the CIPC's new requirement is. And that is that a company's registered address may not differ from its main place of business. So if you are the person responsible to ensure that you capture the information correctly, please make sure that the registered address as it appears on the COR 29 or whichever other document of the CIPC that you use is in fact the main business address and not the address of the auditor or some other third party. And once again, here you will simply re-upload the document that you have already uploaded under the identity of this entity. The real difference between an upload of a natural person and that of a juristic person comes on the next page, where you have to provide details of associated persons of that entity. This is challenging from a number of perspectives. The first challenge is that you, as the person who does the data capturing, must know exactly who is an associate of that entity. And to assist you, there is a role block with a drop-down screen that gives you a list of the associates that the FIC would be looking for, such as in the case of a trust, the founder of the trust, if that person is still alive, all the trustees and all the named beneficiaries of the trust, over and above the normal requirement for persons who are authorized to act as signatories on behalf of the trust, and so on. And the same aspect with regards to companies and other juristic entities, where you have to do the customer due diligence and therefore link as an associate all directors, all substantial owners, and let's assume here that for a substantial ownership we mean shareholding of 25% or more. And a very important one that the FIC is placing a lot of attention on lately is also all beneficial owners of that entity. There does not necessarily exist a record available to the public of who a beneficial owner is, and I would recommend that you consult with your compliance officer or in the alternative, just revisit our FICA training section on the system to try and get a handle on who and how you should determine whether you're dealing with a beneficial owner or not. It is very often useful in determining who the beneficial owners are to have regard to the notes in the financial statements of companies and close corporations and so on. So the first thing you'll do is you will select a role for the person or juristic entity that you are about to link as an associate. And the reason that I emphasize or a juristic entity is simply because remember that in the case of a company, for instance, you could have another company that is a shareholder in the first company. That is why in the second input column on the screen, you will see that you are required to input either an ID number to distinguish that it's a natural person or a registration number. And here the system basically replicates the procedure that it asked you to do right at the beginning when you started with the registration number, and that is to tell it whether the associate is going to be a natural person or a juristic person, so that it presents you with the right screens in follow-up. In the case of the example, I have selected an identification number, and I have then added the identity number of the person whom I wish to link to the Geels Trust as a trustee. Okay, here comes an important part. It is possible for the same person to, for instance, be a founder and a trustee and a named beneficiary in the trust. So there might be 3 roles. We are looking at amending the system to allow you to select multiple roles. For the moment, though, you are required to capture that same person 3 times, one for each of the roles. And here's the second important aspect to remember. If you have a person, let's say a natural person, who is a client of your firm, and you had already captured that person onto the database, and you insert the ID number here, the system will know that that person already resides on the database, and it will give you the option to simply link that entity. When you make that selection by clicking the link entity icon in blue, then the system will simply link that entity to or person to the company that you are busy capturing. If, however, the person that you wish to link as an associate has not previously been captured as a client on your system, and you have to capture this client from scratch, here comes the third important aspect. You still select link entity, but what the system will do now is it will recognize that this person is not already on the system, and it will therefore take you to the first page that you would normally start to populate when you capture a new data subject from scratch. And this brings us to the fourth and last important point with regards to associates. The FICA requires that you perform customer due diligence on the associate, but the customer due diligence is not necessary to be performed in respect of products and services and understanding business questions. And the reason for this is because that is not your client. The entity to which you want to link this person is your client, and therefore you are only required to answer those question sets in respect of the entity and not in respect of the associate. The system will, however, for completeness sake and in order to get to the final page, still take you to the page on products and services, and it will still take you to the page on understanding business. But you will see that in both instances, the normal question sets will not appear. The only answers that you would be able to provide there would be not applicable. And that then gets the system to the end where it wants to go without you having to populate unnecessary and frivolous information that are not required or that is not required for purposes of customer due diligence. Once you have finished with the process, both to add the associates and then to take the juristic entity's capture process to its end, you will see the results of your hard work and the risk report. And the only difference between the risk report of a juristic entity and that of a natural person, as you can see on the screen, is the addition of associates on the risk report. This is important because you can then see at a glance who the associates are, what their relationship to that juristic entity is, and also whether the associates themselves are approved or not. And in fact, if an associate is not approved and has a pending status, that pending status will also affect the status of the juristic entity, which will remain in a pending status until the remedial actions in respect of the associate had been completed. To complete those remedial actions, if you are the designated remedial action user, is you simply click on the report next to the name of the associate on the risk report. It will then take you to that associate's risk report where you can complete the remedial actions. Okay, guys, I think that kind of sorts out data capturing, both for natural persons and for juristic persons. Thanks for your attention.